On the top of India Upfront, a big story. Another element has been added to the fast-spinning BBC documentary row on Narendra Modi and the Gujarat riots of 2002. BJP Member of Parliament Mahesh Jethmalani has claimed that the BBC docu-series India, the Modi Factor, is a hit job by the BJP at the behest, yes viewers, wait for it, the Chinese state itself. Jethmalani based his sensational claims on an article in a prestigious British publication that claims that the BBC was funded by Huawei, a firm under the lens across the world, in particular the United States, India and the United Kingdom, for alleged close links to the Chinese state. It is thought to be a listening post in many countries, viewers, for the Chinese government. There are many connections that many international governments have found between this company that is in the telecom sector and the Chinese government, the Communist Party of China. But for the moment, let's listen in to what Mr. Jethmalani has claimed, and that has absolutely created ripples across the news environment. Listen to this, viewers.
It's proven, it's part of the UK press, it's well known. First of all, they do this very discreetly and clandestinely. The money which they receive. Now, you know that Huawei is banned in Australia and it's banned in the US. Two of our Quad allies have banned it, right? Now, it is well known in the UK also, and the UK has also banned it from 5G trials. They've sanctioned Huawei. In spite of that, they're taking it to get around those sanctions. What are they doing? They're taking money from Huawei till today, right? And there's been a long history of BBC anti-India propaganda. Their ties with Huawei are very, very old. All that has to still come out, right? Also, the content material they get from, most of the content material which they rely upon, and including this documentary, the content material is from very tainted pro-China sources.
Well, viewers, in a statement that he issued, he said, why is BBC so anti-India? Because it needs money desperately. Taking money from Chinese state-linked Huawei. BBC is pursuing the latter's agenda. Latter means Huawei and the Chinese state. Simple cash for propaganda deal, BBC is up for sale. BBC has a long history of spreading disinformation against India. Anti-Prime Minister documentary is a continuation of this malified trend. Now, viewers, the BBC makes no secret of the fact that when it broadcasts overseas, it invites advertisers and takes money from leading world companies to finance its journalism. However, it insists that there is an iron curtain between the money it gets and the journalism it does. Viewers, Jethmalani's claims made by the BJP and echoed by it is based on an article in the British newspaper The Spectator from August 2022. Now, here are some excerpts. This article claims that the BBC is taking Huawei money to fund overseas journalism. Huawei's questionable new corporate partnership with BBC. BBC.com adverts say it's paid and presented by Huawei. Adverts gush how UNESCO and Huawei are closing the digital divide globally. Advert writes glowingly about Huawei's tech initiatives. Content made by BBC's sponsored content team StoryWorks. Huawei partnership was first announced 3 years ago. This is what the article claims. And Huawei allegedly aided Chinese state in surveillance technology. Its surveillance technology targets Uyghur minority population, sanctioned by the US in 2019, barred by the UK in 2020 over security concerns. All of this is contained in this article that appeared first, viewers, in August last year. So that's about 5 months ago. That, incidentally, is also about the time it takes to make a documentary of the nature of which the BBC aired. Now, is there a direct correlation? We don't know. But we will speak to Mr. Jethmalani shortly. In fact, Times Now decided to investigate a bit more. And we found that BBC's own webpage made glowing sponsored content for Huawei, which it claims shows the real story of the company. Now watch this, viewers. Watch this clip.
Huawei is a $100 billion company. Most people think that Huawei has come from nowhere, when in actual fact it's taken 30 years to get to where they're going. Mr. Ren, the founder, lived through a very difficult time in China's history, which included famine, the Cultural Revolution. He'd had a pretty hard life.
History has determined the existence of Huawei. If China didn't open up, Huawei would not exist. If private companies would not be allowed, Huawei would not exist. It fit perfectly the bill, what was needed at that time for a Chinese entrepreneur to give the push towards what will become one of the biggest telecom companies in the world.
Viewers, this is a promotional feature put out by the BBC, waxing eloquent about the founder and the company and its mission. Now, if you dig a bit more, you will find several articles which reveal how BBC's own journalists have opposed their own platforms, the BBC's ties with Huawei. Sample some of these. BuzzFeed.com quotes, viewers, quotes BBC journalists who are protesting this tie-up. What does it say? BBC division made glowing sponsored content for Huawei, and BBC News reporters are horrified. BBC journalist said, "I nearly threw up." This was, viewers, what BuzzFeed put out on 13th November 2019. Subsequently, Verdict, another web zine, on October 2021 said senior BBC executive Gavin Allen takes a role at Huawei. Head of BBC News programs recruited as Huawei's executive editor-in-chief. Viewers, there is yet another reference. Deadline, another webzine on 21st December 2002, says BBC Storyworks has partnered with at least 18 Chinese clients. So this is BBC's liaison department, which obviously connects with big companies to get advertisements and produce advertisements and advertorials which are paid for. Senior BBC journalists have appealed directly to managers to sever Storyworks' ties to China, but said their pleas had fallen on deaf ears. All of this is easily, viewers, discoverable. You just need to go and Google. Viewers, Huawei has a reputation which is notorious globally, and given that it supposedly subscribes to superior journalism standards, the BBC shouldn't have done business with Huawei. I'm not just saying this, the BBC's own journalists are saying this. There was even an influential meeting between a top manager of the BBC and Huawei that created a massive stink within the BBC ecosystem. Now, here's what we mean about Huawei's past. The fact is that Huawei was founded by Ren Zhengfei in 1987, and you heard that on the BBC documentary. The concern is Zhengfei is a former PLA officer with government links. The People's Liberation Army officer, that's what is said. The fact is that the founder's daughter was arrested in December 18 in Canada. The concern was the US claims she helped Huawei dodge US-Iran sanctions, and that she was involved in deep espionage. The fact is that China passed the 2017 National Intelligence Law, which made certain stipulations with regards to any company working in the telecom space. The concern is that it must support, collaborate in national intelligence work. This is a diktat to that company or any company. The fact is that the US, Australia, UK, Canada, New Zealand, France have banned its 5G equipment. Yes, viewers, Huawei can't supply material for 5G technology. The concern is experts red flag possible cyber espionage by the firm. The fact is that Huawei phones are banned by networks like Verizon and AT&T. The concern is that Huawei was labeled a security threat by agencies. The fact is that the British Telecom, which is a telecom communications company in the UK, is removing Huawei parts from its 4G network. The concern is National Cyber Security Centre alarm on risks to network. And here is the BBC, viewers, accepting money for its overseas work from Huawei. The fact is that part of projects for Saddam's Iraq and Taliban in Afghanistan, the concern is expertise in bugging telecom and computer systems. India has kept out Huawei out of the 5G network auctions. Why? Because new conditions under a security directive were not met. So viewers, here is the background really, and I want to go straight across to Mr. Jethmalani. Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani is with us. He's also a member of parliament with the Bharatiya Janata Party in the Rajya Sabha. He's also a leading lawyer. So he knows a thing or two about the facts as he puts them out. And he's not given to exaggeration. Mr. Jethmalani, you have come across obviously these articles linking the BBC to Huawei. Why should we be worried? And why do you call this an attempt at taking money to do the bidding of the Chinese state?
Well, clearly, Rahul, I mean, now you've expanded even further with all the information you've just brought out in your prelude about the extensive links. Right? I mean, these links are really deep now and intensive. Intensive, extensive, whatever words you use. Now, given all that, right, and the what are they doing this for? They're doing this to promote, and they're openly proclaiming, right, how enamored they are, what kind of work they're doing for Huawei, right? Now, the agenda which they have shown qua India in all their overseas broadcasts has always been anti-India. Why? This is not founded on any solid evidence. Take the documentary. The documentary is in the face of Supreme Court verdicts. Why would you challenge the Supreme Court's findings on what really happened in the Gujarat riots and what was the role of then CM Modi in those riots? Was he behind them? Was he in any way connected with them? When a clean chit had been given by a searching inquiry by both investigating and judicial agencies. What is your motive in saying this, apart from the fact that this is a 2002 event? Why are you raking up in 2023? What is the reason? And 3, you are concealing the source of your funds very cleverly. What you don't take these funds now from Huawei, right? After Huawei has been sanctioned in 5G trials and has become some kind of a pariah because it has spy network capabilities, and many countries have said they're a security threat, including the UK itself, which is the reason why the home country of BBC also banned it. Now, given all that, the money you are taking is being taken in a very clandestine fashion. You are now taking Huawei money in a company called Storyworks. It's an overseas entity. You're not taking it in the UK now. You don't deny your previous links with. You're quite brazen about your previous links with them. But since the sanctioning of Huawei, you are now taking your money in a foreign entity owned by you, called Storyworks, which, as you have pointed out in your prelude, right, has been castigated, right, for not only taking the money, right, but also taking it from a state which you should not be taking it from, in view of the fact that that state is an oppressor of people whose causes you are sometimes championing, i.e. the Uyghurs. So, all this adds up to an extremely diabolical scenario where actually this is circumstantial evidence, right?
Yeah, circumstantial.
The money is there, the money trail is there.
But many
what are you doing in return? It's your agenda.
Okay, many people say, Mr. Jethmalani, looking in, and if I play devil's advocate, I mean, you're the advocate here, but if I were to play the devil's advocate and say that, look, you're doing this to justify your ban or the purported order that has been put out by the government to ban the BBC's documentary in India, you're building a case for that, number one. Number two, that yes, timing aside, what's the problem if a media house differs with a Supreme Court verdict and continues to expound on what it believes was overlooked by the Supreme Court or what it thinks was perhaps not considered by the Supreme Court? Of course, you've been part of those cases, so you probably know better than I. And number three, most importantly, that look, at the end of the day, many media houses around the world take money. That doesn't mean that their outlook is in any way jaundiced by that.
Right. So we are now proponents of the BBC in this country, including those who have gone to court, are wrapping themselves in the freedom of expression flag, right? But you have to be very careful. If those who are using freedom in this country come with motives, right, and the payment of money is something which, first of all, before releasing this documentary, did they make disclosure that we are being funded very heavily over a period of time by a Chinese state-owned enterprise which has been accused in many countries and banned because it provides spy network facilities for the Chinese state? Have these people just been blinded by the fact, I mean the proponents of the BBC documentary have been blinded by the fact that this happens to be a foreign organization with a historical reputation, undeserved anymore, such as the BBC? Have they done enough due diligence? Is the money factor not something which should raise their eyebrows? A. B, as I said earlier, what about the timing? Why now? This is a 2002 incident. Why are you deferring from the Supreme Court so many years after? What is the reason for bringing it in the public domain? Right now, we are entering election years now. The next 2 years are heavily laden with elections in this country. State and center next year. Right? What are you trying to do? Third, it suits Chinese interests, right? Because in this particular documentary, you have tried to inflame passions between two communities, right? You now want to revive something which is buried and closed on weighty evidence by the Supreme Court. You are now trying to fuel discontentment among a minority community.
Okay. So you're destabilizing the country is what you're saying.
All this adds up to the fact.
Right.
You're going to create a serious law and order and public order situation in this country.
Right.
And you're doing it out of mala fide motives. Your motives are not clean, given timing, and not only that, you have antecedents against India.
Okay.
As recently up to 2021, you were publishing the Indian map without Kashmir. Who did that please? Our enemies. Who are those enemies? The enemy state for India, China. Are they not pleased that Kashmir is not a part of India? You are taking money and publishing those maps. You had to withdraw that because the Indian government called you out in 2021 and you apologized for it. But you are still unrepentant on other matters. Earlier you've been taking the Indian army apart. You've been accusing them practically of genocide, right?
Okay.
In Jammu and Kashmir.
Okay, so you're stringing
now,
together a large number of narratives.
Else.
Okay,
the new
so let me
agenda
ask you.
Is election year coming.
Final question, Mr. Jim. I understand. I understand where you're coming from, and the way you've painted it does seem that it is a dire situation. Now, I just want to ask you this. It's important. We all know the BBC employees themselves have been horrified, to quote them, and they nearly threw up at this tie-up. So it's been known. Why hasn't the Indian government, therefore, proscribed the BBC from broadcasting in our country if it is anti-India in its outlook? I mean, this would then amount to a serious security lapse.
I agree with you. And I think this should be the last straw. This latest narrative should be the last straw. It should have been done a long time ago. It wasn't done, and that's unfortunate, but it's not too late now. Because this is something which is aimed at destabilization. It is aimed at disharmony. And Rahul, it's about time the Indian government now takes up the cudgels and bans it. They have to first deal with the matter in the Supreme Court. They have to expose this freedom of expression constitutional article of faith in the Supreme Court first. Then they have to think about banning this pernicious organization which is heavily funded by the Chinese. And I want, all these people who are talking about freedom of expression, right, and going to the Supreme Court, only to malign Prime Minister Modi, right? Now that you've learned that this institution is clandestinely funded by an extension of the Chinese state, i.e. Huawei, right? Are you going to think twice now about all these steps? And secondly, right, if you are concerned about Muslim oppression, right, are you not concerned that the Chinese state which funds this institution has done enormous injustice? It has indulged in brainwashing and genocide of the Uyghur minority in China. Does that not upset you? Okay. Where is your hypocritical morality?
Okay. Well, Mr. Jethmalani making a point there, elaborate one against the BBC and building a case against the BBC's outlook. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jethmalani. Of course, time will tell if a case can be made out by the government on the back of what you're claiming. And I'm sure you're going to talk within the party and speak to perhaps the INB minister and other stakeholders to take action, even perhaps the Home Minister. But we've come to a point of inflection. Thank you very much, Mr. Jethmalani. We've come to a point of inflection, viewers, where many people are now going to question the motives on the back of what Mr. Jethmalani has gone public with. Viewers, I just want you to very quickly also pay attention to what the Russians said today. The Russians have accused BBC of waging a disinformation war. And let me also tell you, viewers, that this company that is allegedly connected to the Chinese deep state has been...
That this situation is yet another example how BBC wages an information war against Russia as well as against other centers of force. And I would like to draw your attention that a few years later we understand that BBC wages a war even within the British establishment, being an instrument of and reflecting the interests of one group against the other. So we need to treat it this way. It is not an independent broadcasting company, but a dependent broadcasting company, which neglects very often the basic fundamental requirements to the profession of journalists.
Well, viewers, in just a few moments, I'm going to give you more hard facts. Remember, on this show, we always empower the viewer so that they can go away feeling that they have a complete and comprehensive picture. Now, viewers, it's not just the Russians. The Chinese have been accused of trying to destabilize many other countries. The UK has accused them, the US, Australia, Taiwan, New Zealand, and Canada are some of these. And I'll come, viewers, to all those facts in just a few moments. Let's open this up and let's ask some basic questions. Varis Pathan joins us on the show. We also have, of course, others tonight, like Lokesh Jindal of the Congress. And from the left, we are represented by Mr. Srivastava. I'm not saying it again. BBC's own employees have said this publicly. Please Google and you will see it. They're on record. So, Mr. Jindal, are you supporting today? Unknowingly or knowingly, I don't know. Because your bosses have signed an MOU with the Chinese Communist Party, and I'll show you those pictures in just a few moments. You'll remember them a decade ago. Are you therefore part of an elaborate campaign sponsored perhaps by China to undermine India's unity? Is this what is happening? And given the fact that you have supported moves in the Supreme Court to challenge the ban, would you now reconsider, given the fact that these details have come out? Mr. Jindal.
Good evening, Rahul. Right now we are complaining that BBC is working at the behest of certain private companies and political ideologies. But I want to ask a question. Is our Indian media free? When we talk about the World Press Freedom Index, our rank has slipped down to 150. Now you are ranking up Supreme Court's judgment. What about the Indian media, which was criticizing the Supreme Court when it made its remark on Nupur Sharma, the way she had communalized the situation? Where was the Supreme Court then? Aren't we hypocritical? Answer my question. Is Indian media free
Mr.
from any
Jindal,
form of
if you
bias
can come up
or any
with
form of...
if you can show that certain organizations which have news portals that are funded by agents that are anti-India.
Then,
and I agree with you. The point is that your party also supports those media organizations here in this country.
No.
Oh yes. Your party, the Congress party, your party bosses, excuse me, sir. If you're speaking about them, then you're part of the problem, sir. Mr. Jindal.
No, I'm speaking as an ordinary Indian.
Because the Congress party supports certain media organizations vehemently, and those media organizations, I won't go into names tonight. 1 minute. I won't go into names tonight. But those media organizations have been red flagged as receiving funds from those that are wanting to undermine our stability, territorial integrity, and our democracy. Will you tonight tell me, therefore, Mr. Jindal, will you tonight tell me and put your hand on your heart that that isn't the case?
Rahul, there's a saying, "Jab Saiyaan Ho Kotwaal to darr, kaahe ka." Now the state agencies, they have their investigative wings with themselves. They are going to put whatever facts suits their convenience. But every layman knows, every one of all the panelists over
here. Sir, is it not true? Okay, one second. Let me tell you. I knew this would happen, that the Congress... Okay, I knew, sir, that the Congress would try once again to take us down some rabbit hole. So let me now bring you, I'm not saying this, viewers, foreign democracies, well-established democracies have said this about China and China's attempts to infiltrate and destabilize. I start with the United Kingdom. Half of the retweets by then ambassadors in its favor and promote pro-Beijing politicians. Sometimes it just sowing chaos and falsehoods. Council on Foreign Relations report to US Justice Department 2022. Viewers, if China is today using, I'm not saying it, BBC employees have said it, Huawei, an alleged and black-flagged organization to fund the BBC, why shouldn't we be suspicious of what the BBC's agenda might be? It's a legitimate question. In Australia, Beijing-linked donors paid prominent politicians to shape Australian foreign policy favorably towards China. The Diplomat says this in 2017. The Council on Foreign Research put this out, viewers. In Taiwan, before the 2020 president posed, Chinese officials reportedly instructed Taiwanese media to promote its favored candidates. China has increased its disinformation and other influence efforts targeting Taiwan. This is again the Council on Foreign Relations viewers putting this out. In New Zealand, China supported business people taking control of much of the local Chinese language media. Can you imagine, viewers? Yan Jiang, who spent 15 years in PLA's intelligence, was elected to parliament in 2011. Can you believe that, viewers? He was even elected to parliament. This is New Zealand. In Canada, China covertly funded at least 11 federal candidates in 2019 elections. Also, pro-China agents posed as residents to spark protests to stop the mineral extraction. This is again part of the Diplomat 2022. Viewers, this is very well documented. And are we to believe that the Chinese would spare India? Mr. Mitra Iyer?
Thank you, Rahul. So, there's many aspects to this, but first to answer, the who's guffawing has been able to find a single procedural lapse in the court.
Sir,
has anyone found any kind... Excuse me, sir, I did not interrupt you. Now, please do not interrupt me.
No, you took my name.
None of these people...
That's why I'm interrupting.
No, I did not. I have not yielded to you. I have called your name, but I have not yielded to you. Thank you. No, you will not get to interrupt me.
When you're observing your remarks, please...
No, you don't get to talk. Rahul, can you please mute him?
One second. Mr. Jindal, I'll give you the time to respond to him. Let him finish his point. Let him finish. I always do it, you know this. Yeah, go ahead.
Now notice, none of these people have ever been able to find a procedural flaw in what the court said. Alright, everything is court, till the point the final judgment is delivered. Now, process and procedure kisi bhi cheez mein violate hua hai in the Supreme Court verdict. And mind you, it has gone through several appellate stages. Has any one of the processes been criticized? There, the criticism in the Nupur Sharma case, the criticism started right at the beginning. But let's now come to the BBC. I just wanted to bring this up since he brought up that thing. Let us come to the BBC. You see, we are focusing too narrowly on China. The BBC is a complete web of a lack of accountability, supineness and conflict of interest. You see, it has a large population. It has a large population of employees who are British of Pakistani origin. Okay, it's especially in the research and editorial staff. I would suggest people go look up the BBC reports. For some reason, they seem to have removed the latest report. The link is broken. I accessed it yesterday. Today, the link seems broken. But you can go through their diversity thing and see the number of Pakistani British in their staff, number one. Second, we all know exactly how leftists have infiltrated every single aspect of journalism and the humanities. The humanities controlled by the left, we know this. Third, remember that this is a company that has advocated for every single regime change, claiming it was absolutely necessary. Do you remember that time when, the Iraq war started? Of course, they advocated for the weapons of mass destruction, which nobody found. They were claiming it was absolute proof. But then, when the invasion actually started from the south, from the Basra region, they were claiming that Saddam Hussein's troops were literally firing their guns point blank, their howitzers point blank into the crowds. Now, anybody who knows howitzers knows the amount of time they take to reload. That was simply physically impossible. But okay. I still remember Tim Sebastian on the news doing all of this. Okay. Right. So, even though they are leftist, even though they have a high population of Pakistani Muslims in their employees, they are not independent. They very frequently spread the British government line. The fourth issue here is the complete lack of accountability. Because if you own a TV in Britain, you have to pay TV tax. Okay, it doesn't matter if you watch the BBC or not. You have to pay TV tax, which is basically a tithe on you, which the money goes to the BBC. So they get money, no accountability, nothing of the sort, whatever employment practices you want. Fifth, if you want to see how their political inclination goes, they have been relentlessly attacking Rishi Sunak and his Muslim head of the party, of the Conservative Party, Mr. Zahawi. Why? Because they want to keep propping up this Labour narrative that, Muslims can't be part of the Conservative Party. They can only be part of the Labour Party. So they play their own politics. They are compromised in intent. They are compromised in composition. This Huawei angle is just one more angle. Remember, Huawei at best contributes 10 to 15% of their motives. All their motives, if you line them up, from their ethnic composition to their political ideology, to their susceptibility and that lack of accountability, all show you exactly why the BBC would want to target Modi.
Okay, well...
Right. Last thing, if you allow me just 30 seconds more, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. What was new in that report, Rahul? Exactly zero. The only thing new in that report was allegedly this FCO report, Foreign and Commonwealth Office report. And then when Jack Straw was interviewed about it, He said we didn't actually find anything. It was our people who went and spoke to quote-unquote reliable sources who told them this was the case.
Okay, so
okay.
it's all...
They weren't even sources in the government.
It was dressed up, you're saying. It was dressed up.
Yeah.
And therefore, because it was not credible and because it was low-level intelligence, it was never made public. But now, it was never taken seriously. It was never raised with anybody. And Jack Straw, viewers, that beacon of rectitude lied about Iraq's WMDs, by the way. A large number of Muslims, millions of Muslims died because of Jack Straw's lies. And people like Waris Pathan support him.
250,000 Muslims.
250,000 died and are continuing.
Most of them children.
Continuing
most of them underage children.
And people like Waris Pathan will support Jack Straw's Foreign Affairs Department's report. Is that so, Mr. Pathan? The Foreign Affairs report prepared under Jack Straw is more important to you than India's own Supreme Court? Sir.
Well, Rahul, I was just listening to Mr. Jethmalani. Mr. Jethmalani is a member of parliament and a senior advocate himself. If he has got the evidence to show or to suggest that Huawei was supporting the BBC to create a false propaganda by making a documentary, why does he not move the Honorable Supreme Court, file a counter affidavit in the petition which is being filed,
he will be doing
which is kept for hearing?
He will be doing
bring
it.
the facts before the Honorable Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will pass an order.
He told us he will be doing it.
Very good. Let the Supreme Court decide then.
So let me come back to you. No, don't divert. Don't divert. The BBC, Pathan Saab, BBC's own employees are saying.
Yes.
And what are they saying? We are horrified that they nearly threw up at the tie-up between BBC and Huawei. Why would they be wanting to throw up? Why would they be horrified, sir?
That will be decided by the Supreme Court. What happened there? I am concerned about my freedom of expression.
See, I
follow the Constitution. I live in democracy.
Right.
I follow the Constitution. I follow the democracy.
Right.
Constitution has given me right, freedom of expression, and I am entitled to watch a movie of my choice. I am entitled to watch a documentary, whichever I feel like.
You are
Under what
absolutely
provision
right.
of law can the government prevent me from watching this documentary?
You are absolutely right.
Under what provision of law?
You are absolutely right.
And if
you are absolutely right, Pathan Saab. We have no quibble with that. I have told you.
Just give me 10 more seconds, Rahul. I just want to ask a question to you.
Pathan Saab, I want to ask you this question.
Just 10 seconds and I will finish.
I want to ask a question to you.
10 seconds.
Okay.
Yes.
Sir, I just want to ask a question. Please let me ask. Because you have answered.
10 seconds, Rahul. If tomorrow somebody comes out.
I'll give you 1 minute to answer. Not 10 seconds. You can take 1 minute.
Just
1.5 minutes. So I want to ask you, Pathan Saab, simple question. Forget about the ban for the moment. That the Supreme Court will look after. I'm not in favor of the ban. I don't think anyone here is in favor of any bans. Okay. The fact is that the BBC is being accused of taking money from Huawei, a company that is thought to be linked to the deep state in China, the Communist Party in China, promotes Chinese interests. The BBC's own employees have a problem with this. Isn't it a possibility, I'm only asking you, is it a possibility that the Chinese could have influence over the BBC's editorial possibility? It's a simple open-ended question. I'm not making an accusation. Is it a possibility? Otherwise, why would BBC's own employees be horrified?
Yes. I will answer.
I
will answer to your question, Rahul. Supposingly, I don't allege, I don't say that you are doing that. Suppose somebody comes up with a report alleging that Times Now is being funded by a certain entity in China and they are using it to promote Modi, to create false propaganda against the minorities of the country, to create hatred in the country, to glorify BJP. What legal steps will you take against that entity? The only step you can take is to file an affidavit, to move before the Honorable Supreme Court. The courts will decide. Or will you come before the channel and you pass a judgment and you be judgmental? You become the Supreme Court judge? You will not vote it. Similar is the position today.
I don't understand the question.
If somebody has alleged that UAE is supporting the BBC.
Sir, isn't it a fact?
मैं तो आप पे allegation कर रहा हूँ. मैं तो आपके बारे में बोल रहा हूँ.
Pathan Saab, isn't it a fact Isn't it a fact that the BBC's own employees...
Then go before the court and say, Rahul,
I'm only asking you.
Rahul is clean person, he does not take money from foreign entity
let the BBC...
to use false propaganda against the minority community. And to promote Modi, to promote BJP. And Rahul Shivshankar is a clean man. That will be decided by the court. But the allegations can be leveled.
Okay. So
refute the allegations. Refute in proper channel. The proper channel is the Supreme Court of the country.
Pathan Saab, 1 minute. I am not saying it. Jethmalani is also not saying it. He's not the first person to say it. And Ishkaran Bhandari has done his research. He's come on this show and I'm going to ask him. Ishkaran Bhai, here is a situation where BBC's own employees in the UK are upset that the BBC's overseas department that makes programming for the rest of the world is through some sort of offshore company taking money from Huawei technologies, which is widely prescribed around the world, or at least not allowed to participate in infrastructure projects in some of the leading democracies of the world. I'm not saying it, BBC employees are saying it. Why do you think they would be saying it?
Rahul, let's deal with a fact of life. The one who pays for the DJ decides which song will play. It has been well established that China uses its companies as its arm, and not only Huawei. You see even TikTok, how TikTok operates in China, where it shows maths, physics, sports stars versus how they operate in Western democracies, where they say all sort of perverted activities to youngsters to misguide them. So China using it, quite apart from surveillance, of how they use their companies, is well documented. And communists have always had this issue of useful idiots in other countries whom they use. Now let us deal with the facts. There is an information war going on. Democracies are particularly vulnerable because all you need to succeed in a democracy is to change the person who wins the election and bring in a party, for example, a party you may have an MOU with or an understanding with, explicit or implicit, and you win the war. So democracies are vulnerable on that, and India, of course, is a democracy. Along with its many strengths, this vulnerability exists in it. Even USA faced this vulnerability and hoaxes of Russian collusion or Chinese collusion that is going on there also. So what to talk about India? Now in this situation, when it has been documented that Huawei is funding BBC and 18 others are funding BBC, including the fact that they are funding people who, as Abhijit raises a very fair point, are already Pakistani origin people in dominant positions or influential positions in BBC, it becomes an extremely dangerous cocktail for India to deal with. The worry is this year going ahead, there will be many more pieces like this, and how the government deals with it, I don't think so. Its response was very appropriate because it has increased the problem. But the reality of danger on national security as well as propaganda as well as electoral interferences, where artificial intelligence is used to pump in these sort of narratives to vulnerable communities, which will be exploited by people like Mr. Pathan because he will get the votes, so he will support it. People who have gone to the court, they will of course have their day in the court. But the larger reality and the narrative of the danger to India by foreign sponsored,
under what provision of law can you prevent me from watching a documentary?
One second, just want to finish my last point. The larger danger,
my
Rahul,
question is simple.
During this year, 1 second, the last point. Rahul, I am predicting during this year we will have many more debates on your channel on foreign pieces of so-called media doing hit jobs and propaganda pieces. Their names could change from BBC to NYT to CNN or anybody else.
Okay, well, look, 1 second.
One second. Government is prepared to tackle it.
Will that include
1 second.
1 point.
Pathan साहब, देखिए, आपका क्या stance था when the final solution was banned in 2004, and so-called award-winning documentary film on the Gujarat riots by the UPA, by the Congress party, वो सब जानते हैं, आप चुप बैठे. At that time, for the same reasons, it was banned. So don't today fly the flag of free speech. When certain people make certain comments, should I say to the world what? No, 1 second, Pathan Saab, should I tell the world what you have said in the past, what you have been quoted of saying? So don't show us your tolerance. You have zero tolerance. You have said, you have said nasty things in the past, and you should be thankful.
You worry about yourself.
You should be thankful.
Indian mainstream media as well.
1 second.
Will that report include Times Now as well? Mr. Bhandari, kindly elaborate.
Yes, sir.
Kindly elaborate that as well with that debates which are going to take place in the country. Times Now. Will that include Times Now as well?
because he's taken my name, can I ask a
My
simple
question is
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
Would
Ask
you
a
do a
question.
book reading? Because you
have come up with something new. You have come up with these facts. You have come up with something secretive.
Now let us smile.
You have opened the secret Pandora.
Let me ask you a simple
Kindly expand that. Kindly expand that. The nation wants to know.
I am expanding it. Now let me answer. Because you are a free speech absolutist, I'm very happy. Will you do a book reading of Salman Rushdie's book? Please do that. Support free speech.
Let that time come when the debate takes place. I will answer to your question at that time.
You know, I was going to ask the same question actually.
You are a lawyer.
I was going to ask the same question.
You are a lawyer. Under what provision of law?
Pathan bhai, aapke, 1 second, lower everyone's faders. Viewers, I can show you visuals of how Pathan's MIM's workers beat up, physically assaulted Tasneema Nasreen, viewers, in a press conference in front of everybody for writing a book. I'll show you those pictures, viewers. You watch them. These people talk about freedom of expression. They talk about the freedom of expression that suits their interest only, viewers. They are not bothered about freedom of expression. They are the first ones who will stab it in its back. And the communist, viewers, Vivek Srivastava is going to respond to a question. It's quite funny, viewers. Indira Gandhi had accused the communists of being in bed with foreign governments to destabilize our country. And viewers, today, they are in bed with the Congress party. They are fighting elections together in Tripura, in other places. They have absolutely very elastic morals and morality. Every political party has them. So the left is not being any different. Let me also be honest. Look at those pictures, viewers. How they are throwing pots to break her head. If I ask Mr. Waris Pathan to condemn these chaps, he won't. And let me tell you, viewers, I want to bring in Mr. Vivek Srivastava. Mr. Srivastava, look, I am somebody who doesn't believe in bans at all. They should be there. But forget about that issue right now. The Supreme Court is going to deal with it. I'm asking you, if the BBC's own employees are saying that their company has an alliance with Huawei that represents the Chinese state and it makes them want to basically throw up, then obviously it is because they fear that there will be some influence over the BBC's journalism, right? It stands to reason. Yes, since you agree. So then why is the BJP today guilty of suspecting the motives of the BBC when it is funded by Huawei by its own admission? Tell me, sir, Srivastava ji, and why do you buy into their propaganda?
Yes. Give me 30 to 40 seconds now, and please don't interrupt, and let me complete, then you counter me.
Yeah.
My first point, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee told Chief Minister Modi, Raj Dharm Nibhaiye, was he a Chinese man? Goa Adhiveshan of BJP, when 70% of the delegates wanted the Chief Minister Modi to resign, and Advani ji helped him retain his position, were they Chinese agents? When United States of America banned the visa of Chief Minister Modi for 10 years, was it at the behest of the Chinese? So it has become a fashion to blame the Pakistanis and Chinese for everything. Whether a particular company is involved in a media house or not, that is not the debate. The debate is why was the documentary banned and what is the Chief Minister scared of?
Vivek Srivastava, do you support? He
was languishing in jail.
Vivek Srivastava,
do you support
Bilkis Bano? Do you support a company? No, I'm just asking you a very open and shut question. I don't want to get into what the Supreme Court will say, will not say. It's a matter that is sub judice, that is being dealt with. I'm only asking you a very simple question. The BBC's own employees are disturbed by the fact that their own company takes money from Huawei. Obviously, they are worried because they suspect that it might influence the journalistic endeavors of the BBC. Clearly, conflict of interest. Why shouldn't that apply to India? क्या Chinese हमारे को पेड़े देने के लिए घूम रहे हैं सर?
Apply to India. अरे सर, Chinese को छोड़ो जब आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं सर. I agree with you. It must apply to the media houses in India and Noida also.
So then,
Mr. Adani's hostile takeover of NDTV is a prime example.
आपको अंबानी के पैसे अच्छे लगे थे? नहीं, आपको अंबानी के पैसे अच्छे लगे थे कि अडानी के अच्छे लग रहे हैं?
सर गलत लग रहे हैं ना, हमें गलत लग रहे हैं सर।
What idiotic nonsense Vivek Srivastava you are spewing?
दोनों के गलत हैं सर।
No, what nonsense?
प्राइवेट फंडिंग गलत है सर।
What private funding? Who funds you? Hello, who funds you, Mr. Srivastava? आपको कौन फंड करता है? While you come out and
हमें कोई नहीं फंड करता सर, हमें कोई नहीं फंड करता।
No, should I tell you what Indira Gandhi said? No, one second.
एनडीटीवी के टेक ओवर की बात करिए ना सर।
Listen, my dear friend,
रेजिग्नेशन की बात
my dear friend,
रवीश कुमार के रेजिग्नेशन
you go to the Supreme Court, sir, if you have a problem with it. Go to the, I have not stopped you. Adani does business in your state, it's okay. No, one second. The left does business. No, just a minute. Vivek Srivastava को expose करने के लिए it takes 10 seconds, viewers. 1 minute. Lower, 1 minute. Let me speak. Now let me expose him. The left welcomes Mr. Adani to build ports in Kerala. जब भी मारते हैं उनको. मगर when he buys NDTV, उनके पैसे से बड़ी प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है. Are these people, do they think we're stupid? When Ambani bought into NDTV, it was no problem. When Adani buys, it's a problem. When Adani invests in their state, it's all very nice. The Congress party, viewers, Mr. Gehlot, embracing Mr. Adani. His boss says Adani is a person that is looting India. Viewers, they need to wear their thinking caps right. Now they've turned it to the back. That's what has happened. Yes, Mr. Jindal, Adani's money is okay in Rajasthan.
It was Lieutenant General
Don't give me Lieutenant. Ho gaya, sir. Thank you very much. I've run out of time. Talking about Adani. No, please don't go into Lieutenant General and this General and that. Stay on the point, sir. If you have an answer to me. No, give me the answer. Adani's money is okay in Gujarat. It's okay in Rajasthan. It is okay in Kerala. But it is not okay when it goes to NDTV. I can't understand what you're talking about. Diversion. The fact is, viewers, that the BBC itself, it has employees that are on record to say we don't like you doing business with Huawei. They're talking about BBC's management. Why do you think these BBC employees are so upset? If Huawei was such a good company, as the BBC's own adverts say, then what are they so upset about? Clearly because they feared something. Aren't we therefore entitled to fear something when it comes to India? Why does the BBC call Kashmir Indian administered Kashmir? And why doesn't it call Scotland the same? English administered Scotland or English administered Ireland? These are fundamental questions, viewers. It tells you something. I leave it at this.